Alright, so this is on the tactics of law enforcement and the medical community. Now I'm going to talk about Rory Jeppson for a minute. And that's probably what I'll title this video. The issue that I had with Deuel County officers, Rory Jeppson and his girlfriend had the same issues with officers refusing to take a report. In Rory's case, it was him trying to report on a city council member and animal cruelty here in Chapel, Nebraska. A lot of you guys, here, let me pause this. A lot of you guys might like animals more than people. Or that would mean that we have something in common. People are evil. They do evil things anyway, mostly out of fear. The police in this town covered up and refused to take a report from Rory Jeppson about animal cruelty. Specifically, a city council member who was dumping cats off in the country. And the police here refused to take a report from Rory on this. As some of you may know, Rory Jeppson is dead. Many of my key witnesses are dead. There isn't a goddamn thing I can do about that. Now, unlike with Rory and the kittens, the situation that I'm dealing with isn't kittens. I found a dragonfly. Damselfly. In my situation, we're talking about Natalie Marie Bollinger, who is dead. Not some kittens dumped off in a plastic bag out in the country. Sorry about that, I've been sick. Rory Jeppson, he said, you know, Sean, here's the problem, is that we live out in the middle of nowhere. When you got to make a report about the police doing wrong shit, who do you go to? I said, well, I tried the state patrol. He said, so did we. The state patrol didn't care either. Imagine that. When Natalie died, I tried to get the officers to release information that they should have released. Information that proves that I was trying to get a peaceful resolution, that I was trying to get the violence and the threats and harassment to stop. And they outright refused. So, with Tamara, that was my caseworker, and Nicole Peralta, they both have information about that, but Tamara doesn't work there anymore. The police, what they did was they basically did all they could to run the timer out. There's a thing called the statute of limitations. And all they had to do was keep me tied up in courts, to keep my money tied up, and to keep my time tied up, and prevent me from making a report. Illegally, mind you. But as long as they're able to do so successfully, they win. That's where the warrants come in. That's where charging me with crimes to prevent me from making a report comes in. As far as Mandy Hughes goes, I don't know if she was working with the Bollinger family to fuck me over or not. I'd like to think otherwise. But she's not afraid of anything that I would do to her. She's afraid of Ted Bollinger. So why would she come after me? Good question. She blames me for putting her family at risk by posting videos and posting up the things that were happening with her situation and mine, where the whole point in me posting that stuff up is to prove that I was trying to get help, that I was trying at every step of the way to get the police to do their jobs, and they weren't going to because they had too much to hide. And Mandy was a very big part of that. A lot of people were. One of the tactics that the police use when you try to turn in a police officer is that they call you crazy and they transfer you to a different jurisdiction. And then you get charged with crimes in that other jurisdiction. For me, it was pretty easy for them because I want my life to end and I am very vocal about it. Now I outright lie to the police. I have to. I have to pretend that I don't want my life to end over the things that I've been going through. The biggest factor that makes me want to die is the police tactics that prevent me from being able to make a report against them. They cover the wrongdoings of their fellow officers, including making sure that the time runs out, which allows their officers to move on to a different jurisdiction. And that way their reports don't have to be taken or can't be taken, like the one from Officer Cody Selhorst or the one from Jordan Anderson. Actually, with Cody Selhorst, there's at least 4 incidents that he needs to file a report about. With Jordan Anderson, there's at least 4. Possibly 5 or 6. Sheriff Scott DaCosta. After Natalie died, I needed to show proof that I had been trying every step of the way to do it legally, to get this taken care of the legal way. But I didn't have any help with that. Police officers here who are mandatory reporters or mandated reporters, when somebody who is disabled is trying to make a report to them about abuse that they're enduring, these officers have to take their report. But they outright refused before Natalie's death. And after Natalie's death, they did everything in their power to continue that trend. When I said I needed somebody to go in with me in Colorado and here, it's all for the same reason, because they won't listen. Not unless someone goes in with you. That's where family comes in, and my family didn't care. They're a bunch of druggies, just like Natalie's family. So what they do is they drag you out of jurisdiction, take you to a hospital, call you mental. And then at the hospital, they just plant a little birdie in those people's ear. Oh, we think he's bipolar. We think he's schizophrenic. We think he's whatever label it is that makes it okay for them not to take my report. The fact is, the things that they were ignoring, I still have evidence of, and that evidence still needs to be taken a look at. Evidence that I was trying to show them before Natalie was killed. The illegal things that I have been forced to do have been for my own safety and the safety of my loved ones. The threats, and there were a lot of them, against my life needed to be reported by the police. Now, there's a very specific charge for this. It's called making terroristic threats. When people say, oh, it's not illegal to threaten someone's life, actually it is. Tim Beeson made terroristic threats, Dalton Crawford as well. Many people, both before and after Natalie was killed, took part in this. But the officers, well, at first they were pretending like they were going to be cooperative, but then Sheriff Scott DaCosta figured it out. He figured out that I was trying to go after his officers, because I do blame them for Natalie's death. I blame everyone who didn't help, that I went to for help, that should have helped. I blame them all for Natalie's death. The mandated reporters I blame because their job in specific in that situation is to investigate the things that were going on. That is their job. When I took it to Nicole Peralta, she's a mandated reporter. She should have reported it. When I took it to Jeff Ritter in Colorado, he's a mandated reporter. He should have reported it. Tamara, she is probably a mandated reporter, but most of what me and her were working on was getting me disability. getting me the ability to take care of myself financially, because I couldn't do so physically or mentally after everything that had happened. So, when the police take you to these hospitals, and then the hospitals do wrong because the police asked them to, and that's because it's professional courtesy. Those of you who are familiar with that are going, oh, yeah, me too. What this means is that they're not going to turn in somebody who does something wrong because they have to work closely with these professionals. Like a police officer catching another police officer drinking and driving and letting him go because he's a fellow officer, works for the same department. But there's another kind as well. There's the kind where if you try to tell on a police officer while you're in an institution where you were taken by a police officer, they're not going to look into anything that you have to say. They're not going to look at the evidence. You try to tell on what the officers did to you. What are they going to do? They're going to treat you like you're delusional. Like you must be making it up because no police officer would do a thing like that. Really? I've got several police officers on my Facebook that verify that that is the truth. Now, there's a few people who promised to help and just never did, never got around to it. But then there's the fact that when I was taken to these institutions that were supposed to help me to not be suicidal, they didn't help me to not be suicidal. I was charged with crimes for having to defend myself against the way that they treated me over what the police had told them, and over how they treated me because they assumed that I was not telling the truth about what the police had done. Did they ever take a look at any of the evidence? Of course not. At no point in time was I allowed to show those people the evidence. If you say, hey, let's use rape as an example, because that one, it's just as terrible a crime as the things that happen to me. But because it's rape, you guys might actually care. Let's say I'm raped by a police officer, and I have evidence that I was raped by a police officer, and I go to that police officer's superiors and say, hey, I was raped. And instead of investigating the rape, he sends me to a mental institution, and I tell the people at the mental institution that I was raped by a police officer, and they treat me like I'm delusional, like I need meds, like I must be schizophrenic or bipolar and making these things up. And that makes it okay. And then the police have that piece of paperwork saying that I'm delusional, saying, hey, see, we didn't investigate it because he's delusional. Meanwhile, that evidence still exists, but you weren't allowed to show it in the mental institution, so they got what they wanted. The police got what they wanted. And then you try to turn in the mental institution because they didn't investigate it. It's not their job to investigate it. You're suicidal now over the things that were done to you and the way that you were treated. But you can't go to the police, and you know you can't go to the police. And you can't go to the mental institutions. You need to take the mental institutions to court before you can be allowed to show that evidence, unless someone goes in with you, someone with balls, someone like Molly Smith. Now, there were 6 different people that agreed to go in with me in specific, who just never did. Most of them, anyway. Molly Smith was the one and only person to go in there with me to make them take a report. And that was on the things that Ted Bollinger did at my grandmother's funeral. Things that both Graham and Laura Nelson should have made statements about. But they didn't. Now, these tactics of dragging someone out of jurisdiction, like to an institution, for example, Scotts Bluff is 2 counties over. So then when you try to turn them in, you try to turn these officers in repeatedly because you don't have the means to do it over a computer. I've tried. There's many witnesses who can verify that. that I've been trying. There's 3 witnesses that sat down with me just in Washington State alone to sit down and try to help me figure it out so that I could do that. But because it's in a different jurisdiction, I have to come up with the funding to go to these different jurisdictions. Because of what the police did to me and the cost of travel, my disability money was all eaten up. I didn't have the money to go anywhere to do these things. And most of it was on a computer. And with what the police did with my computer in Broomfield, I didn't have a computer to do that with. And the computers that I got afterwards, I had to start all over. Jen Beebe can verify that I was trying. I had a lot of evidence saved up. And that my computer ended up busted. And we had to send it in for repairs. That was while I was living with Desiree here in, over in Sidney, Nebraska. That's Cheyenne County. So now we've got 3 different counties that are involved. Deuel County, that's Chapel, Nebraska. Cheyenne County, that's Sidney, Nebraska. And Scottsbluff County, that's Scottsbluff and Gearing, Nebraska. That's just in this state alone. And we've got multiple law enforcement agencies in each one. State Patrol here and the Deuel County Sheriff's Department. We've got the Police Department in Sidney, Nebraska, as well as the Cheyenne County Sheriff's Department and the State Patrol there. And the same thing in Scottsbluff County. The Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and the Highway Patrol, or State Patrol. They did the same things in Colorado. In Boulder County, there are institutions that they could have sent me to in Boulder County when I was trying to turn in officers. Instead, they elected to take me to a completely different county. A county where I was ignored entirely. I was taken to a facility called Clearview, which is now being closed, being shut down because of the way that they treated people. The things that I said they did to me, well, 5 months later, they did those very same things to someone else, and it killed that someone else. Now, the other thing is, before Natalie died, I had to deal with these officers here in Nebraska, and they blew me off. And then when Natalie died, they wanted to hide the fact that they should have done something. Their job, legally, was to do something. It is against the law. Matter of fact, it's a felony for them not to. A felony. And they did everything in their power to hide that after Natalie died. At first, they were pretending like they were going to help me by giving me the video of what happened at my grandmother's funeral. But then once Sheriff Scott DaCosta realized what I was doing, him and Jared Hahn and Cody Selhorst did everything in their power to cover up the fact that they didn't do their jobs and weren't going to. Now, when I tried to turn them in, they sent me to Scottsbluff. And the problem is that when I came back here to try to work with Molly Smith to get them to take my report again, they did the exact same thing. At first, Officer Jared Hahn told Molly Smith that he wouldn't take my report because he's been trying to avoid me because of the warrants. Well, I've been trying to take care of those warrants, and I was prevented from doing so every step of the way. For months and months, phone call after phone call, being treated like an animal. So this time around, when I went to Scottsbluff, I pled guilty to the crimes that I was the crimes that I was accused of, although that's not entirely correct, because I had to do those things for my own safety to prevent drugs from being forced into my system. And as soon as I got out of Scottsbluff jail, see, that's the thing, I let them know as soon as I got out of the Scottsbluff jail that I was going to go down and file reports about how I was treated in the jail, as well as how I was treated at the Scottsbluff Hospital last year. On the bright side, I found out the name of the man who assaulted me at that hospital. His name is Reuben. I also found out that the security guard who was going to help me is dead. He shot himself in the head. What they did, instead of releasing me from jail, they sent me to the very institution that I was going to file a police report about. The police did this to prevent me from filing a report against them and against that facility. So that facility, Scottsbluff Hospital, where I was told never to show back up again, where I was given a no trespassing order, they transferred me to that hospital from the jail to prevent me from making that report. And within 20 minutes of being there, they injected me with Haldol. This is a mind-altering medication, and one of the side effects is violent tendencies. Yes, this is a side effect of their sedative. Now, in Canada, they use this drug for schizophrenia. Here in the United States, we use it to calm people down. What was done to me was, when I tried to turn in the places where I was harmed, they sent me to the places that I was harmed to harm me further and to get more paperwork to prevent me from being able to defend myself in court. The very facility I was trying to report on, they prevented me from reporting on by sending me to that place. In addition, they wrote slander down on that paperwork but did not write specifics. Like, they wrote down on my paperwork that I was, what's the word? Hold on a second, I'm going to pause this. Well, right here it says, this is from the jail, this is why they admitted me to the hospital. It says, he has made comments to jail staff about being suicidal and harming others. Really? I want to know what those specific comments were. There was a woman there who, her name is Michaela. She was at the jail, and when I was trying to explain to her what happened at the Scottsbluff Hospital a year earlier, I didn't know that she worked there at that hospital. Well, she was writing things down on that paperwork that were outright lies. She was twisting and manipulating what it is that I was saying, and I checked her on it right there in the jail. I said, hey, that's not what I'm telling you at all. That is not what I'm saying to you. Why are you writing that down? And imagine my surprise when I got to the Scottsbluff Hospital and she was there. Not only that, she's very good friends with Ruben, who is the man who assaulted me last year at Scottsbluff. Imagine that. But she also wrote down that I was, hold on a moment. Well, it's not on this paperwork. The paperwork that I needed is actually paperwork that I need an ID in order to get, which I no longer have. That's how long this has dragged out. Long enough that my driver's license expired, and without that, I can't get this information. I have to get help with that, and that's what people aren't getting. Not delirious, not dementia. The word starts with a D, though. Basically, it means that I'm twisting things into something they're not, like making wild allegations or accusations. And I'm trying to remember the word for it that they use in the medical community. But the fact is, the things I was telling her were true. And there's also the fact that they didn't write down what it is that those were the things that I was supposedly saying that were, God, I need to find that word. It's very specific. Hold on a moment, I'm going to try to remember it. Delusional. She claimed that I was making delusional statements, but she didn't write down in specific what those supposedly delusional statements were. So basically, she's just making wild accusations with no proof that they're just wild accusations, and with no proof of what it is that I had said that was supposedly wild accusations. Now, one of the things that she claimed after I was transferred from the jail to the other place that she works, which is the Scottsbluff Hospital, she claimed that me saying that Natalie was my best friend was delusional. No, it's not. She was my best friend. She was. Not is. Not that she was at the time of her death. But at one point in time, yes, she was my best friend. And the situation that I was trying to explain to her, yes, Natalie was my best friend during that period of time in Virginia. Her and Maddie Boa were my best friends when I was in Virginia. There's a lot of other people who have had to deal with this. There's a lot of people who have spoken out that they're afraid to come forward, like Laura Nelson has admitted that she is afraid to come forward because she doesn't want to be targeted by the police. Why would she be afraid to be targeted by the police? For the same reason that I was. Why would she be that afraid? Because she got to see that I was targeted by the police. She was aware of it. She got to be a witness to it. The police couldn't do their jobs, but they could try to pacify me with a sandwich, like Officer Cody Selhorst. When I explained to him this situation over a week before they had sent me to Scottsbluff the first time, I had tried to explain the situation to him, and he didn't do anything about Chris Kurth threatening my life. Terroristic threats right there. And he didn't do anything to document what was going on with the whole Natalie Bollinger situation. But he thought that he could pacify me with a sandwich and that makes it okay. No, it doesn't make it okay. I needed that officer to document those things, not hide it. And that's what's wrong with Sheriff Scott DaCosta. Rory Jeppson deserved better. I deserve better. Laura Nelson deserves better. Candace Bondurant, either she lied about Officer Michael Beard, or she really was that afraid of Officer Michael Beard. In either event, Candace did lie outright. She knew that when she was typing those things to me, she had the intent and purpose of posting those things publicly where I couldn't defend myself. She sent those things to Karamia, who posted those things publicly and also sent them to, I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of Sword and Scale, but Mike Boudet, the man who outright slandered my name repeatedly, went out of his way to pretend that evidence that is evidence that did come from Natalie Bollinger, tried to pretend that it was fake. That message from Natalie Bollinger, it's got a time and a date on it, from 2016. It's not manufactured. It wasn't something that I just took a screenshot and sent out there. When people sent me their email addresses, I forwarded that to them so that they know it was real. Now that sending me out of jurisdiction, that happened all over the place. No officer would take my report without somebody going in with me. And now, because of all of the things that I had to do to defend myself, they say, oh, well, those things are all illegal. No, they're not. It is always okay to defend yourself. Always. The fact is, everything that I have done because the police would not do their jobs. When I was being assaulted, the police would not do their jobs. And although I didn't have a whole lot of proof from before Natalie was dead, I had documentation of the times and dates in my Facebook and on, well, I didn't have the ability to do that on YouTube. I didn't have the ability to make videos on YouTube until Amanda Engeline showed me how to do that when I was up there last year. I was in Montana. Now I know each of these people's selfish motivations. I know their histories. I know about Amanda Engeline's meth history. I know about Jackie McKenzie's meth history. I know about a lot of these people's meth history because, like I said, I helped out people, most of whom were addicts for years and years. Did I help out Jackie McKenzie a lot? No, I didn't, but I did help her out. I also helped out Amanda Engeline a lot. I also helped out, well, quite a few people who are addicts. Many of them should have come forward, but I understand that they don't want the whole world to know about their addictions. The ones whose addictions I came forward about were the ones who intentionally did me wrong. People like Christine Buhit. I helped her out a lot too. The police tactics when you try to turn in police are the same everywhere. They're the same in Washington State as they are here in Nebraska. The same as they are in Colorado. In order to get the police to take your report, you need someone to go in there with you. And you need to be able to take video evidence. The fact is, I wouldn't have taken any of this to Facebook, and I wouldn't have taken any of it to YouTube if I could have gotten the police to do their jobs, which would have required someone to go in with me. Miss Peaches didn't go in with me. She never went in with me. Not even once. Did she try? Sort of. But the one day that we finally got it so that we could go in together, she couldn't because she had her son with her. She had to be afraid for her son being taken away if she tried to make a report. Fuck the United States, and fuck you too.